So basically the easiest way to kind of think about printing to weird areas, and basically any premise of printing to anything kind of unusual with the DTG, is the way the printer works. It has a gap laser that goes across the front there. So that way it detects what the highest level area is. So say I put something up here like this, and that means these seams right here on the edges will be higher than the actual printed area. So what I'll have to do is actually create like a jig or something that I can slide over. Now the 421 platen probably won't be able to do sleeves, all right, because it takes too much to stretch over top of it, all right? So some things that you might be able to do for this is to purchase the custom sleeve platen. It's a little bit more narrow, and that way I could actually just slide that onto there. All right, but I can use this 421 platen to do stuff like left chest logos. What I do for those, and it makes it really accurate, is I've cut like little neoprene pads, basically mouse pad material. All right, and that way I can place these up here on the platen in certain areas. I can tell it where to print and things like that. So that way I can place the design in the center of this mouse pad every single time. So then I just move the shirt to the where the design's going to print. It's pretty simple. Same thing with doing stuff like bags, like tote bags and things like that. Unfortunately, I don't have a tote bag here with me now, but I would do the same premise. All right, I would take like a nice thick, like neoprene material. Okay, it's like just a mouse pad, and maybe even use 2 layers of it. And then as long as I have this up on top of my platen, I could take the bag and stretch it over. So that way that printed area, say right between the 2 straps, the straps would be going down the sides here, right? So that way it's going to lift that area up. So that way it becomes the most highest level area. Is everybody following me so far? If not, then let's see if we can go through some more clarity for you. And just raise your hand if you're not really understanding what I'm saying. All right. So just to give you an example of like, where do I place these pads? Okay. How do I know where to put them on here, and how do I tell my printer to print in that exact location? All right. So let's just go through that real quick. All right. To do this, all right. Say we're going to do, since I have the material here to do it, let's do, say, a left chest logo. If you notice, it covers up my left chest logos, all right? And this is also a button down sleeve and stuff. So this mouse pad technique works really well for that, all right? So now I've got to tell it where to print here on this platen. So let me switch off of video real quick, and I'm going to show you how to basically print a template directly to this empty platen. So that way I know where to place my mouse pad. And then I can also tell it to put the graphic in the exact same area. So it's pretty simple. Okay, so first what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off my camera here, and then I'm going to turn back on my monitor. All right, so I'm going to open up Photoshop. Oh, got to sign in. Oops. All right. Sometimes it takes a little bit to log in. Now you may ask yourself, I usually I prefer Photoshop for the simple fact that most of my end clients don't bring me vector quality graphics. Vector quality graphics are stuff created in like CorelDRAW, Adobe Illustrator. It's not to say those programs are bad; they are awesome. They're really good at creating nice, crisp images and things like that, but they usually don't deal with what customers bring me, such as JPEGs, bitmaps, things like that. That's a flattened image. So that's why I go with Photoshop. Oh, okay. So I have a question here. How many inches is this template? All right. So the general rule of thumb in the industry is no left chest logo will go over 5 inches. Okay. If it's 5 inches wide, it's just going to look gaudy. It'll wrap up underneath the armpit or even into the center of the chest. All right. So usually I go and I've cut my mouse pad at a 5x5 because I know that anything over that's not going to look good, but I can squeeze stuff up to like 4.5 inches inside there and it'll still be all right for those extra large up to like 5X shirts. Okay. So let's see. So let's go ahead and create my template. What I did beforehand is, as you noticed, is I already cut those mouse pads into 5x5 squares. So I just put a ruler on it, did a Sharpie, cut them out with a pair of scissors. All right. And I even sometimes I've actually did like a hole punch directly in the center of the pad. So that way I can kind of feel it with my finger when I put the shirt on top of it. Okay. Let's see here. So what I'll do is just go ahead and create a new document. I'll go File, Open. Oh, not Open, I'm sorry. File, New. And this technique works for all kinds of different things, not just a left chest. So you can place templates, make templates, and put them anywhere on top of the platen, and then cut a neoprene pad or something to that order, to that size, so that way it makes it easier for me to know where this thing's printing. All right, so I went File, New. I'm going to do the width 5. I'm going to do the height 5. 300 dpi, transparent. There we go. And click OK. So now I have a document that's exactly 5x5. All right, so I'm going to move this little screen out of the way so I can see it. If your GoToMeeting panel is in the way, there's a little orange arrow up on the top left side of the control panel. You can actually push that over to the side, and so that way you can see all of your screen. All right, so now I have just a single layer, right? It's a transparent background, which is represented by the checkerboard here. It's basically absence of color. All right, so this is real easy to create a template here. So all I'm going to do is for my foreground color, I'm going to make sure that it's white, okay? And then I'm going to use my paint bucket tool, and I'm just going to paint bucket this 5x5 area. All right, so I can tell that it's an actual object. It's like an actual square. So, but it's exactly 5x5. All right. So then I have this cool little button down here at the bottom of my layers tablet. It's called the FX button. So if I click on that, I can add all kinds of special effects. The one I want to do is a stroke. Okay. So then my stroke properties come up, my layer style. All right. So what I have here is my different structures of the stroke. All right. How it's going to be laid out. All right. This is the size of it. So since we're just going to do like a little pinpoint line, I'm just going to do it at like 2 pixels, all right? And then instead of doing an outside stroke, because what that would do is basically put it on the outside of a 5x5 box, which my document is only 5x5. So I would not be able to see that stroke, all right? So what I could do, I have 3 options here: outside, inside, or center. Center means it would split half on, half off the page, or the object basically. But I want to do an inside stroke. So that way it does it to the inside of the object, which will basically mean, whoops, got my mouse, would basically mean that I have a stroke line that is exactly 5x5. All right. And I'm going to do it in a black color. All right. So then I click OK and OK. So now if I move this around, you'll notice I have a little 5x5 square. Right there, and it's exactly 5x5. All right, so then I'm going to save this somewhere, and I'm going to call it 5x5 template. Say if I was doing like a tote bag or something like that, and that middle pocket was like 8x8, that's what I would make: an 8x8 paint bucket fillet do an inside stroke of 2 points, and then I would print that somewhere on my platen and place my neoprene or something that is really flat and won't move around on you. Okay, so let's hit Control S to save it. I'm just going to put it in my documents just because that's an easy place to put it. I'm going to do 5 by 5 template. I'm going to do PSD file's fine. Also, a lot of the times, if you have special effects, the RIP software does not like to pick these up. It'll drop them off. So what I'll have to do is basically either flatten the image or save as copy and turn off layers. All right? So that way there's no layers involved. So I hit save. And now I can open up my RIP software. And then we can use this template to print directly to the empty platen. If I expand this back out a little bit. Okay, so now I've got my M series also attached to this RIP software. You will probably just have the Viper or M series. The basic premise of how to do this works universally across whatever printer you have. You're basically just printing a box to an empty platen and then placing your pad on top of that box and then putting your shirt on top of it. Now, by putting the shirt on top of it with that mouse pad underneath it, it raises up the area. Okay, so let's go to my Viper. I'm going to do white shirts. Okay, so inside my white shirts here, I'm going to go down to my Viper. We'll just do graphics production since it's a little bit quicker. This looks like somebody else was doing something in another webinar. All right, so I could either do it on the 4-up or the 2-up. Usually if you're doing left chest logos, doing 2 at a time is usually sufficient. If you have 4 shirts, unless you've got 4 heat presses when they come off the heat press or come off the printer, then you're going to have shirts just sitting around with wet ink, and that's just a recipe for disaster because it always happens. Somebody touches it or something like that, smears it, and if it smears, it ruins that garment. All right, so I'm going to be doing it 2 at a time. So I'm going to go back up here to my 2-up. Okay, so that way, even if I didn't have that little board on there and that little gap, it's still going to treat this like a 2-up. All right, so now we'll import that graphic. Let's go to Documents, 5 by 5 template. Okay, since my shirt collar usually goes to this side over here when I'm doing like left chest logos, or if it's a bigger shirt, I could just do it in this direction where my collar would be at the top of the machine here. All right, so yeah, let's do it that way because we can have a little bit bigger of a shirt and it gives me a little bit more freedom. All right, so then I'll click on my template and then I can place it. So what I'll do is go about 1 inch down, enter, and then I'll do it at about, let's see, let's just increase this to about 8 inches over. I'll go a little bit further than that. Let's just click this up until I get it where I want it. Maybe not that close to the edge. We'll go like 10 and a half. Okay. So I did 1 inch down, 10 and a half across. So I need to make a note of that. So that way when I import my images into the, and set this up to print an image, then it will be at that location every time. All right, so it's 5 by 5, 10 and a half over, 1 inch down. If I wanted it, say, with the neck up here, then I would put it in this area. So it would probably be 1 inch over and probably an inch down as well. Okay, so is everybody following along so far? Raise your hand if you're having any issues, and then we can, I can touch base on that. You can go ahead and fill out a question or anything like that. Okay. All right, so now that I have that there, let's go ahead and pre-rip it. I'll just hit spool job. All right, and then I'll go ahead and click back over here on my webcam as well. And I'll get y'all to, I'll move it, the camera in as well, so that way y'all can see it. Okay. Does everybody see the video right now? Can I get a show of hands? Excellent. Okay. Excuse me. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the machine ready. So I'm going to raise this up, and I'm just going to put in an empty platen here. I raise it all the way up to the gap. Then hit load. This is definitely a single layer print, so I make sure that the little blue light's not on, or it'll ask me to load paper, and then I'd have to reset the machine again. I know that's annoying, but that's what it is. Okay, so now that I have this kind of loaded and ready, I'll click back over here on my RIP software, and I'm going to send that print job to the machine. All right, so now let me wheel y'all over here so you can kind of see what's going on. Move some of this stuff out of the way. So as you can see, it's printing that box directly to the empty platen. Yeah, a place to get these neoprene pads, the kind of thick stuff and things like that. Amazon has everything. So just look for thick mouse pads or large mouse pads and stuff like that. And then you can cut these into pretty much any shape that you want. Also, heat press companies, they sell the base of the heat press. They actually sell those pads. They're probably a little bit more expensive, but it's also really thick and a lot more heavy. Let me show you a piece of that. So, same thing. So that way when you place it, it lays and stays completely flat. So then I could cut this with a razor blade to any shape that I wanted. And then save that template for any other time that you want it. All right, so now, as you can see, right, I've got that. Let me see if I can get the reflection off of there. There we go. So now you see my little 5x5 box. So what I would normally do is either put a little bit of spray adhesive on there or some of that real thin, like double-sided Scotch tape. So that way when I place it, it does not move when I put my shirt up here. All right, but if I'm only doing one, I can usually be careful with it. Okay, so say I want to do a print. Let me just go get a white shirt real quick so I can actually print this real quick. I'll be right back. Oh, that's a mess up. Okay. Question that someone had, who was that, Amy? How do you know which platen it will print on? The way the RIP software is set up, so as you're looking at the machine, this is that front leading platen. Let me click over here on my RIP software. This is that front leading platen right here. This is the corner that I'm standing close to. Does everybody see that? Okay. So now back over here to the video. When I'm ready to do the left chest logo, the way I had this set up is I'm going to place the shirt right here. So as you see, if I'm getting close, like a small shirt or something like that, that collar sits up on top of the platen a little bit. So by putting the mouse pad underneath it, it raises it up above that level. So that becomes the highest level area. And that's what we're trying to get. All right. So how do I know where to mark my shirt? Because graphics, they always start at like the 0, 0. And I'm going to put this thing in the center. All right. And if you've ever heard of embroidery, there is a national standard for finding the center of a left chest. All right. That's been out for years. All right. And it's usually, there's actual measurements. You could probably Google what those measurements are. It's basically from the top collar of the shirt, or right there at the edge of this, straight down, and then about an inch or two up from the armpit. So if I drew a straight line from here to here, that would be the center of my left chest. So I can't really use marking pens and stuff because we're using a printer here. So let's see, how would I mark this? I could use anything that's pointy, right? So I can use the end of a pen. So I'll measure down right here, measure over, and then I'll make a little mark. Let's see if I can, let's see here. So right over there. So this is going to be the center of my left chest. So I've got a little bitty circle there. I don't know if y'all can see that, but it made an indentation. I don't actually use the pen part. All right. So then another little trick I can do. Let me raise this up a little bit. To make sure to help it get centered, I can always fold the shirt in half and line it up. And what I can do is kind of press down, and it creates a center line for me when I open it back up. Ooh, yeah. All right, so now I'll put my pad back up here. And then since I've got it set up the way I do, I flip the shirt in like this. And I place that, and that's why I said that you could put like a little dot there so I could feel the center. But if you're good at eyeballing stuff, I can see my little square here. Let me focus this a little bit better. So I can see my square, so I can tell that I've got the same distance here, and this one's a little bit closer, so I gotta bring it up. Same distance there to edge. All right, and then my center line's still going straight. And then I tuck. Cool thing about it, I don't have to worry about these seams coming up there on the top. Because normally, if there was like a wrinkle or anything on top of that platen, it would lower the platen down, the bed would lower down by itself because of the safety feature of the gap, and it would make a blurry, kind of misty looking print. So I'll recheck this. All right, so there we go. So then what I always do when I have a special object on there, I manually push the platen in just inside the cover, so that way that eyeball sees it. You hear it automatically lowering. So I can scan a shirt just by pushing it in and out. So now that it's not lowering anymore, then I can hit load. All right, cool beans. So now I've got the machine loaded. I've got my center that I marked directly in the center of that pad that is put in a specific place. Kind of see where I'm going here. All right, so let's go back over. I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my software here. Turn the camera off for a second. Let's go back into Photoshop. Let's find a logo to print. Let's see if I can find something. Chat logs. Let's see. Key flow. All right, that's no longer available. That's not either. Sorry if that's really loud on your end. Let's see if I have anything in pictures. Let's just do the DTG logo. Okay, so here's our DTG logo. All right, so how can I put that into the center of a 5x5 box? Pretty easy. All I have to do, we're going to make the original document the size that we want to print it. So remember the kind of rule of thumb that we had? We don't want anything over 4.5 inches wide. All right, so in that case, let's go image and image size. All right, so don't want to print it at 90/60 dpi. You know the sweet spot's 300. And if not, make sure you go to training. All right, but I'll take the width. We'll print this at, say, 4 inches wide. So I hit OK. So now the document is actually 4 inches wide. So let's zoom back out a little bit. All right, so that still doesn't really give me what I need to be able to place it directly in the center. So the next one I can do is go image canvas size. That's the actual document. So what am I going to make that? 5 by 5. Hit OK. Whoops, the background color was the wrong color. So I just hit Control Z to undo. Let me switch the foreground and the background just by hitting this little button. So that way my background color is white. Image, canvas size, 5 by 5. So now I have the DTG logo centered in a 5 by 5 square. So if I have the document, I can always trim the document. Like if I just open that again, if I want it to be centered inside my document, I hit trim. So I can trim off all the pixels here. So that way it's right up to the edge of my graphic. All right. Then I can make it 5 by 5 because that way it's doing it proportionally, as you can see here. Click OK. So now you see it centered in a 5 by 5 box. So let's go ahead and save this as DTG logo. DTG logo. And I'll just put LC, so it's left chest. All right, and I'll save that. And it can be a JPEG for the simple fact that it's I'm printing to a white shirt. I would have to have it on a transparent background if I was printing to a dark or print a big white box. All right, so I'll click Save. That'll be fine right there at the maximum quality. Let's go ahead and reduce Photoshop. And then instead of it printing in the graphics production, I'm going to do graphics quality. The difference between production and quality is the print mode. All right, production is a 1080, and the graphics quality is a 1440 by 720. Yes, the quality takes a little bit longer to print, but you get more saturation of ink because it's going over itself more often. All right, so let's go ahead and import that graphic. I'm going to make sure my template is correct, so I use the 2UP V2. All right, I'm going to import that graphic again. Let's say it was in pictures, and then DTG logo left chest. Open. So where do you think I'm going to put it? At those measurements that I did for the pad. It was 10.5 by 1. All right, because that's exactly where my mouse pad. I just printed that template on there. All right, so let's see. How good am I? So let's go ahead and spool the job. And I'll go ahead and turn my camera back on in a second so that way you can see it. All right, now the job's spooled. Go ahead and get the camera on here. And I'll go ahead and hit print. Expand the camera out a little bit more. So, okay, so I'll pull this around here. Focus this down a little bit. Show you where the pad is. So that's dead center right there in the middle of that pad. So I would pull this off. And let me see if I can focus the camera a little bit better. And as you can see, I have a left chest logo. Cool. I'll heat cure in a second. All right, so that's the general premise of printing to weird locations, all right? Using what you existingly have to get stuff done, all right? Because sometimes there are places that you will not be able to print to without buying a custom platen or having one created for you. There's also, you can do those neoprene pads. All right, so it's just outthinking the printer and kind of realizing what you're trying to do. Say I had a long sleeve shirt and I kind of want lettering to go all the way down the side. So probably what I would do is get a couple pieces of this, and I would cut probably about a 4-inch square going down like that if I did not have the sleeve platen, all right? Or 5 inches wide. So that way I would place this right up here on the template, and then I would lay the sleeve going right over top of there. So that way the cuff would be down here, taped down with like some masking tape across it. The top edge of the shirt or the sleeve would be up here hanging over the edge, and I would tape that down as well. And then I would actually tuck the rest of the shirt underneath here or tape it if needed. Okay. So, no, the ink does not bleed through the shirt. It is designed by DuPont. So it's a very high quality ink. We've been in this industry since the inception of it. And we've built a great relationship with our ink provider. So it is genuine DTG ink. So definitely if you do have one of these machines, definitely go with the ink that we know works good. All right. There are other machines that we have, like the M2, and this is the Viper2. There are older pieces of equipment out there on the market, like the HM1, even the kiosk. I personally still have a kiosk that still works. Right now I've got it flushed out and stuff like that, but because I'm just not doing t-shirt stuff right now. But yeah, this technique works for pretty much everything across the board. You're just telling it where to print and then building up the area that you want to print it. All right, so I've also had people that get these little tagless things and they want to add their own logos to the back there. How would I get it to go in there? Am I going to cut like a little semicircle? No. There's a much easier way to do it. It's called flipping the shirt inside out. So that way, this area now can receive a design. So, say I wanted to print, I would tear this tag out, and I wanted to print right here. Well, now I've got this little collar sticking up. So then, what do you do for that? Slide the shirt over. You can always open up shirts. So, as you can see now, I've got it so that way I can print right here. I just make sure that tag's tucked out of the way or tear it off because it doesn't need to be there in the first place because I'm adding my own. So then I would print it maybe a 1/4 inch down from the edge, and then I could print whatever I wanted right there. And then when I heat press it, I would do the same technique as sliding it over the base like that. So that way it doesn't try to press the collar shape into my graphic. All right, another question here. For long sleeves, what do you do and how do you handle the sleeve seam? Like I was saying, you basically would print or have that pad going across here, and the seam would be over the edge of the pad, and you would just tape it down. So that way it's out of the way. Let me see if I can explain this real quick with just what I have here. Yeah, I flipped it inside out again. So we'll just imagine this is a long sleeve here. So say I want to print right there. So as you can tell, this is over the edge. Like here's this. It's kind of hard to see with a black shirt. I'll bring this around here. So imagine the sleeve going all the way down. So with that 5x5 square, or I would have like 5 by probably however long the sleeve is. And then my cuff would be down here, just like this is, and it goes over the edge right here. There's like a little lip right there. Does that make sense? I hope so. And then this seam, it would be over the top here. I would place a piece of tape right across there. I would place a piece of tape across there. It's still going to be lower than this pad. All right, so you're making where you want to print the highest area by putting stuff underneath it. Okay. Any other questions so far? Right? Same premise for like doing down the leg of a jean. I don't really want to print down the seam here, but if I did, I would have to really flatten that sucker out. But then I could make a pad go down one side and then pad going down that area and having a gap in the middle of it, so that way it prints right down, the seam sits down into that gap. So that way it lays it flat out. Yes, unfortunately, yes. You would have to probably rotate something or create like for doing dead center of a sleeve right here. Right? But just so you know, I've done a bunch of sleeves. Doing it right across this edge makes it lay to the front so you can see it when you're like walking down the street. Right? But dead center, if you did want to do that, you would have to flatten it out, probably heat press it, but then you would have this little seam right here that would get in the way. Let's see if I can kind of dark. Let me get the white shirt. Hold on one second. Okay. So what I would do, if I open this up right here, you can tell that there's a seam right there. And that would, this is kind of a small shirt, but if I flatten that out a little bit, I would heat press the long sleeve piece of it, so that way it's nice and flat. But then I've got to make that seam go somewhere. So what I would do is have two individual pads that are smaller and then a gap in between it, so that way the seam, that bottom seam, could sit inside that gap and then it stays flat. And then once I have everything like taped down on the edges, like the collars and stuff like that, and the cuff of the shirt over the end, then I could take like just a hand iron and just press it across this neoprene pad or something to that order, and it would make it nice and flat. And then definitely I would scan it as it goes in manually by pushing the platen. All right, another question. What about using either two pads or notching the pad to make room for the seam below the pad? Yep, okay, that's what I was just explaining. Okay. But yeah, so those are just some different techniques. I wish I did have a whole bunch of different materials that I could print to. I just don't have any in-house right now. This morning I did do, we had a custom sample being made by one of our sales teams. Let me see if I can show you a picture of it here. So what it is I used the 421 platen, created a jig right there, and as you can tell, that is a pair of panties. So yes, you can print in weird areas. What I did was take a piece of carpet that was nice and flat and cut it right there, did a little line going up there, made it 2 inches right there, 2 inches right there, and just shorter than the width of the platen itself. So came out pretty good. And that particular print on a pair of white cotton panties was 3 cents of ink. And then I could have, if I wanted to, I could have done 4 of them at a time. Right? So it's just kind of thinking outside the box. When you have those specialty locations, you just have to outthink the printer. Do what you can to either get the other areas out of the way by putting it underneath, or building up the printed area so that way it becomes the highest level area. Okay, if you have more specific type questions or things like that, you can always send pictures of what you're trying to print to, or just ask advice in general. We're always here to help. All right, there we go. Okay, so to create support tickets and stuff like that, if you have something specific that you're trying to do, and you just want advice from somebody who's been doing it for like over a decade now, doing the direct-to-garment printing, Yeah, shoot us an email. You can always go to support.coldesi.com. Once you get there, you have the top header bar and it has different subjects. If you hover your mouse over the letters DTG support, a little flyout window, you can pick which machine you have or RIP software, if it's RIP software related. Down at the bottom of each one of those pages is a place to fill out a support ticket, and you can even attach images at that time. So that way one of the technicians can take a look at it and know what you're trying to do and give you the proper advice. All right, and then you're always welcome to just call into our 877 number and talk to our lovely receptionist, Darla, and she can route you to the appropriate person. All right, also just to give you kind of a heads up on this stuff, this same technique that I did right here, I also do for canvases. As you can tell, there were other bigger boxes on here. Those were from canvases that I did previously that were an exact size. I placed the canvas on it and then just printed the image directly to the canvas. So that way it overprints it just a hair. So that way I don't have little white lines at the edge of my canvases. Really cool stuff. Definitely stay tuned for upcoming tech talks where I will be doing like canvas printing to kind of show you techniques. Also going to be printing to like wood and some other specialty products. I'm probably going to go up to like Michael's craft shop and just go around and just go shopping for random items to print to, like little boxes, all kinds of groovy stuff. So I hope this has been informative. Like I said, if you do have any more specific questions or anything like that, definitely just give us a call or create a support ticket and we'll be happy to help you out. Hope you all have a wonderful day and we will talk to you soon.